news and market movers. This is The Pulse with Francine Lacqua.
Good morning, welcome to the show. This is The Pulse. I'm Guy Johnson. Fran is off today. She'll be back very soon, but you got me for a few days, so settle in. Let's try and figure out exactly what's happening with the Eurozone data and try and give you an idea what that composite number looked like. 52.2, so that's a much better than anticipated, and that's the France data. Excuse me, that's not the data I am looking for. So the Euro area composite PMI rises to 51.2, the forecast 50.1, so we're north of 50. I think it's been largely skewed by the data coming out of France on the services side, which looks completely Olympic related. Ollie Crook joins us now out of Berlin. Ollie, what do you make of the numbers?
Yeah, Guy, let's just recap what we got out of the Eurozone after we got those numbers from France and Germany. So manufacturing down at 46.5, which was a miss, but frankly, Guy, a much lighter miss than I had anticipated, just given how poor the manufacturing numbers were in Germany and France, and we'll go over those in just about a second. Services came in at 53 for the Eurozone. That was a beat. And as you just mentioned, Guy, that dragged the full composite up to 51, which was also a beat. A little bit more activity in the sort of terms of the composite. And services, as you say, though, with that big skew from the Olympics, which will take us to the French number where we got that services number. We were expecting 50.3. It came in at 55. That was an absolutely monster print. I guess the market's not that great at sort of modeling the impact that the Olympics could have on an economy, which is, fair enough. When you look at the German side of things, again, you had a miss on services. That is sort of a surprise because, we know the manufacturing story has been very poor. But when you look at that manufacturing number, Guy, when you look at the PMI out of Germany coming in at 42.1, that is not what you want to be seeing in the German economy, the absolute powerhouse of industry within Europe. The expectation was for 43.3. Guy, that just notches another month of contraction for German manufacturing. We're down, I think it's now 26 months of consecutive contraction within the German economy. Also a slowdown, but as you were mentioning, Guy, slowing growth, rising prices. That is a dynamic you do not want to see over at the ECB.
Yeah, it's interesting the football didn't have such an effect on the German data, but the Olympics did have a big effect on the French data. I don't know. Pay your money, take your choice on that one.
Yeah,
the inflation story, I think, is... they've taken the big goal down behind you. On the prices front, I think it's really interesting. Let me quote from the S&P press release. On the price front, August flash data indicated an acceleration in the rate of output charge inflation to the quickest since February. Ollie, how does that confuse the picture for the ECB?
I mean, fundamentally, if you look at the marking pricing for what we were expecting out of September today, I mean, we woke up today and there was a 65% chance of a rate cut of 25 basis points in September by the ECB. That's what the market had anticipated. Later in the morning, we're now at a 99% chance of a rate cut in the September meeting. And remember, Guy, Lagarde said it herself back in the July meeting that September is wide open. And frankly, all of this data doesn't really clarify it, I think, a huge amount. I mean, obviously, we'll be watching very closely next week at the CPI data that we're getting out. We're going to get also that really key data in terms of the wage negotiations. And remember, in the first quarter, wages sort of rose by the most that they had in about 30 years. So when you think about the purchasing power within the European economy that could feed into sort of increased inflation is going to be a major concern. And let's also not forget when we have Germany is again a problem on inflation. Commerzbank has been saying that they think that actually the price is coming down in Germany. That has stopped for the coming months. So you really have a real debate ahead of you at the ECB, particularly from the hawks in Germany.
Yeah, we're going to get that wage data, indicated wage data from the ECB a little bit later on. We'll pay a lot of attention to that data. Ollie Crook joining us in Berlin on this PMI data. Remember, we also get the UK data at past. I will bring you that data. What is that going to tell us about the UK economy? Is it in a different place right now? Ozan Tarman is the Vice Chair of Global Macro at Deutsche and joins us now. Good morning.
Wonderful to be here, Guy.
Nice to see you. What do you make of the numbers?
I think the big motto of this year remains recession hawks and inflation bears will both continue to lose. I think we're in a good place. Obviously, there's a bit of Olympic spirit versus Euro football. German numbers weren't great. French numbers carried us. I think market is right on that 99%. That cut is coming, September cut. In fact, coordinated cuts are coming. Maybe it would have come in June, July. We can discuss that. Maybe Fed should have cut in July. but now central banks are in a good place, and they will start giving those cuts.
Does the growth picture out of Europe justify 50, but the inflation picture subtracts 25?
Very well put. And I think they want to go 25, so they will jump on your they will jump on your gray area. A bit similar in the US. We talked about this before. Last year, even in the beginning of January, all these 6-7 cuts priced in, exaggeration. Then all of a sudden, because of owner equivalent rent, a questionable factor, pushing it all the way to December, the cuts, mostly in the market. I think that was also exaggeration. Then something happened in August. All of a sudden, we panicked. 50 basis points cuts everywhere, 103 being priced. I think if I wasn't on the EGNC in the beginning of August, I would just say, calm. I think they just want to go 25, 25. I think they're on the right track to do so.
Where does that take us? 25, 25, 25, 25? Where does ultimately...
I do agree. It's a good place to agree with your chief economist. I do agree with our Matt Luzetti's revised view now. Yep. That is where we are. 25 each, September, November, December. By the way, remember all this, they shouldn't cut in, they shouldn't and won't cut in September. It's close to the election. All of this is a bit urban legend. They will, and they can cut in September. As for ECB, Deutsche call, Mark Walz call is a skip. September and then December. Yep. We shall see. We shall see how inflation goes. Again, you were on the right place. Wages this afternoon, important. How does that play out with the PMI headline? That's very key for Madame Lagarde. But I think their intention is probably to go indeed 25 and then skip and do another 25.
What's having the greatest effect on Europe right now in terms of the economy? Is it what is happening in the United States or is it what is happening in China?
Very good question. Probably a combination. Stuck in between. Yeah. That's why for a long time people were very concerned, rightly, about Europe and about Germany. But at the same time, see the resiliency. Because of that, partially because everybody was so bared up, Euro continues to trade on the resilience side. In June, in one of our Frankfurt macro conferences, I did poll the room, almost 200 clients, and maybe 190 was in. And Guy, 189 hands went for 103 euro before 110. And you see where we are now. So that shows you what the pain trade is. That shows you the frustration trade. And that shows you why
is it an unwind of the Trump trade? Is it there's a bunch of factors here.
That's one of them. Yeah. Definitely. Another big change since most of us left for the summer vacations is that Kamala Harris is doing so much better in the polls. First of all, Kamala Harris being in the race. 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, we were talking about the red wave, steeper curves. 60% lightizer tariffs everywhere, dollar going to 103. All that stuff is now being unwound and it's having a factor.
Let's talk about Jackson Hole. Well, let's talk about the data yesterday and what we learned from the minutes, and then let's talk a little bit about Jackson Hole. I read the minutes last night.
Dovish.
They really lent dovish. I read them twice. I was kind of I'm really surprised at how dovish they lent. And then you've got the wage data as well out of the States, which is bigger than anticipated in terms of the revisions that we're going to get coming through. Why don't those point to us edging towards a 50 basis point cut in September?
Good question. First of all, I think that the dovishness, I completely agree with you, dovishness of the Fed minutes shows the convincing power of Mr. Powell, who was in the right place when everybody got too dolled up, 6-7 cuts, then only in December. The guy stayed in the balance, and he was right. So now the market is coming more his way. We will definitely leaning more towards caring and focusing on growth rather than inflation. So starting with even claims today, every claims number is like an NFP number. If claims indicate bad, lesser jobs, certainly if NFP brings another bad surprise, then more 50 will be priced in. If we get inline numbers, then he wants to probably get away with 25 and not to give the market a 50.
What does your gut tell you? Does it tell you that last print was an anomaly? It felt like it was maybe hurricane affected, maybe it was a little worse than anticipated. Did it feel like it was consistent with the rest of the data?
There was hurricane effect, but my gut feel tells me that thank God for those revisions, right? Because that was always the mumbled truth. We can also discuss that, by the way, 818, some people getting it 33 minutes earlier, all that stuff. But I am not going to, all this backward-looking, don't focus on it too much stuff. I think it's the losing bear camp talking. It's important. When Kamala Harris and Walz lose another 1 million jobs, that's important. That's on the back of their mind. That's on the back of Jay Powell's mind. So my gut tells me the guy wants to go 25, 25, 25. But if there is any bad surprise, this time that we can't blame on hurricane, he may even go 50.
What is he going to say tomorrow? Does he say anything tomorrow? And is that okay?
A victory speech in an understated Powell way.
Yep.
No, victory lap without...
It's a victory speech.
Victory lap without the whole Mediterranean celebrations. But yeah, market is coming his way. Now we're convinced with 25. Even the Hawks, Kashkari, everyone is, maybe we take some Bowman, are indicating 25. So he can take that 25 and move off the table. But he's not going to push the drum too much. He's going to say he's going to continue to watch the data. Because remember what we were fearing again 2-3 months ago. Inflation will surge back. The next Fed move, maybe some very credible names. The next Fed move, maybe an hike. All that stuff turned out to be completely wrong. The guy turned out to be right.
The market has got the Fed horribly wrong this year. I think we can take that. Europe looks like it's a sort of paradigm of virtue in terms of its ability to have some consistency in terms of expectations. The US has been.
If they just listened to Powell, they would have done better.
Maybe so we should be listening to him tomorrow, I guess, is the message. But if he just pushes the data dependency line and just says we are going to remain data dependent, is that going to be enough? Is that going to be enough to soften, kind of calm the market down? Because any hints at 50, and I'm wondering if the market says actually maybe they see bigger concerns than we do. Any hints that maybe actually we don't need imminent rate cuts? The market's going to go, what are they seeing on inflation? It's a tight, narrow path that he's got to navigate tomorrow.
I completely hear you. That's why whatever he says, I think as of today, I think we're going to go away with 25 and not 50.
Yeah.
That we might take as an opportunity to take profit on some of these trades that have been working unbelievably well since August 5. What a surge in Nasdaq, Nvidia coming next Wednesday, the surge in Euro. So maybe that just 25 perception, people will take as an excuse to take profit on short dollar positions, maybe on the received rates positions. But we're very fragile to, as I told you, any miss on the lower on the growth side, on the NFP side, then we will remember August 5. Another thing we should talk about, carry trades. That was another big factor on August 5, what happened in August. So they're
telling me that I've got to wrap this conversation up, but what do you expect from the BOJ tomorrow? On Friday. Tomorrow's Friday. Yep.
They're not going to make you too nervous, so they will remember what happened. So no big hints of any hikes coming anytime soon. Market is coming their way. If this continues, if the calmness on U.S. rates continue down the line, they will hike again. So all of a sudden we're changing. The rallies on dollar yen is a sell. I still believe in the yen.
You still believe in the yen, and the fragility continues there as well. It's all on a knife edge. Ozan, thank you very much indeed for coming to see us.
Always a pleasure.
Nice to see you. Ozan, Tarman, Vice Chair, Global Macro at Deutsche Bank. Thank you very much indeed. What are we going to talk about next? We're around 15 minutes away from UK PMIs. We'll focus on that. The maker of one of the only approved Mpox vaccines telling Bloomberg that his company is responding to the outbreak in Africa. We're going to find out how next. That conversation coming up. This is Bloomberg.
To ramp up really takes a shift in resources and capabilities. We're looking at doing that. We can do that. That's how we will be able to deliver the 2 million doses. But really, we really need orders before we can move.
Paul Chaplin there, the CEO of Bavarian Nordic, the Danish supplier of this key vaccine against Mpox. Shares moving higher today. The company reporting revenue last night and second quarter estimates. The revenue was the second quarter. The estimates, obviously, for the full year, the estimates were above expectations, basically confirming those. Obviously, we're talking about the story in Africa as being significantly related to this. Scientists there kind of rushing to stop the Mpox outbreak in Central and Southern Africa. They're finding a difficult situation, a kind of complex mosaic of infection patterns, different strains affecting different demographics as well, which is critical. You've got different infection routes. Bloomberg healthcare reporter Janice Q joins us now. Janice, we've just heard from the CEO of Bavarian Nordic, the maker of the vaccine. The business is responding at the moment. It is ramping up, but it's waiting for these orders to come through. When is that going to happen? When are we going to start to see these big orders coming through that means that they can really start to crank these things up?
So Bavarian Nordic has the capabilities, they have the inventory, and they actually already started stockpiling a vaccine after the last Mpox outbreak that we saw globally in 2022. They do need to, as you say, get the orders, and the Africa CDC, along with other partners like Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, are working very, very hard, and the WHO are working very hard to get this on the ground. Africa CDC spoke to the press earlier this week, and they said it would be a matter of days. I think the longest time frame on the initial orders hitting the ground is by next week.
What is the latest in terms of how quickly this is spreading? And it was really interesting. I was talking to Jen Sabazaja a little bit earlier on. She was saying that actually you're getting different strains affecting different demographics as well. The children look like they're being affected by the lesser concerning strain, but others are being affected by this newer mutation. Just walk us through the kind of dynamics of what is happening here.
So Clade 1, which is the more severe strain, is endemic to the Congo Basin. And it's been spilling over for decades, actually, but with increased frequency. And that is where most of the children are being infected, is with the Clade 1A. Clade 1B is this mutated strain that the scientists and virologists on the ground have very little information about. And it is what is fueling the current rise in numbers. There's been sustained human-to-human transmission of this Clade 1B. It is seeing in adults, it seems to be spreading faster through sex workers, and this is exceptionally concerning because that spread can move quickly.
Janice, thank you very much indeed for the update. Janice Q joining us out of Santon on what is happening with the latest in the region and how the Mpox vaccine is spreading, but also kind of how quickly we can ramp up in terms of the production story around getting the vaccines out there. Coming up, we are going to need to talk about what is happening with Deutsche Bank as well, one of the stocks that's very much on the move this morning, reaching a key agreement with claimants regarding the acquisition surrounding postbank. We'll dig into the details of that story next. It's been going on for quite some time. Deutsche Bank's on the back of it this morning. This is Bloomberg. Deutsche Bank stock up 2.1% right now. This after the bank said last night that it expects a €430 million boost to its third quarter results. This comes after making, quote, significant progress in talks over the majority of claims relating to the postbank litigation, which relates to the price that was paid, and some investors believing they got underpaid in terms of that acquisition. Joining us now, Bloomberg's EMEA Finance Managing Editor, Tom Metcalf. Bit of a surprise.
Yeah, caught me by surprise. The messaging coming out of Deutsche Bank before yesterday night when the statement dropped was these things will take time to resolve. We're working away, but not expecting any kind of big shifts. And then last night, bang, this represents about 60% of all the post-bank claims. Yep. And to my reading, it looks like Deutsche Bank done a pretty good job. They provided, about 800 million for these specific claims, and they've been able to kind of write back 55%. Right. So they effectively... Is
there an expectation they'll be able to settle all of them at these kinds of levels?
I think it's always more complicated than that. That would be how my simplistic brain would go with it, right? And but yes, the guidance we're hearing is, look, every claim's different. And, for me, the fun thing is, as a lawyer representing a different set of claimants out there who's already been saying that, a settlement at €36 is unacceptable. This was at €31. So there's a big range out there. And that would be beware going forward the rest of this provision. That's the question. Will they be able to do it at 45%, or do they have to go a bit more richer to satisfy other people?
I'll be interested to see. There's a statement out this morning on buybacks as well, which they're kind of re-examining. Tom, thank you very much indeed. Finance Managing Editor Tom Metcalf. Up next, you got UK PMIs about to drop onto the tape. We'll bring you those numbers and we'll bring you some analysis. That's next. This is Bloomberg. 29 minutes past the hour. Good morning. Welcome back to The Pulse. I'm Guy Johnson in London. Francine is off today. Let's talk about kind of where we are in terms of the top stories that we're watching. The European stock's kind of drifting a little bit, to be honest. We're waiting for the sun to come up. That may be not a live pitch you're watching from Jackson Hole. The sun's going to come up on day one of Jackson Hole conference. you're going to see a lot of speakers today. Central banks very much in focus right now. They're going to be reacting as well to some of the data that we're watching. Euro area getting a bit of a boost from the Olympics. Certainly that was the French PMI data. That was quite strong, but the German numbers are pretty grim. The growth story looks pretty bad. And what makes that worse is the fact that you've basically got a tick up in inflation coming through, it looks like, out of Germany, and that's going to be concerning to the ECB. Over in America, back again, Tim Walz formally accepting the Democratic nomination for vice president, playing the everyman card, basically targeting swing voters, talking about unity. So that's basically what you need to know this morning. But the real standout story thus far has been the data, and we now get the UK data coming through. So let me just run you through the PMI numbers that we are now getting. So the headline number, the manufacturing number, comes through at 52.5. That's a little better than anticipated and a little tick higher than what we got last time round. The services number at 53.3 is better as well. So this is painting a picture of a UK economy that is doing better than anticipated and actually certainly confounding some expectations of a rollover. So that takes the comp number to 53.4 versus 52.8. So actually, and remember, this is a diffusion index, so this is kind of versus what we saw last time. So relatively things are improving. Let me just see if I can refresh my PMI releases page on the PMI page, and we'll get into what we're seeing in terms of the statement coming through on that front. See if I can just get that to load up, and then we can bring you, let me make it a bit bigger so I can actually read it, and then we can figure out what is happening here. In terms of the statements, the composite output index was the highest since April, signalled a solid increase in private sector business activity. The headline index is now posted above 50, the no change threshold, for 10 consecutive months. This is good numbers. Basically, that is what seems to be the signal coming through from the PMI data. August PMI signalled another solid expansion of the UK private sector output, supported by a robust upturn in new order intake. Sounds good. So it sounds a lot more positive than the data we've seen coming out of Germany this morning. John Stepek, who is the author of Bloomberg's newsletter, Money Distilled, sitting next to me. The UK appears to be kind of confounding expectations right now. This is not great data, but it's not bad data.
Yeah, and I mean, this has been the pattern for the UK for the best part of 2 years now. Back in 2022, we were facing what was expected to be the longest recession in living memory. At one point, that was the Bank of England's forecast. Instead, we got a kind of minuscule technical recession that may even be eliminated from the record when they revise it. And certainly for most of this year, it's been very clear that the numbers have been getting better, been surprising to the upside consistently. Most of the GDP forecasts for the year ahead are probably still wrong, probably still weighted to the downside. So I think there's actually probably plenty of room for further surprises. And this latest PMI data, again, the PMI data keeps surprising on the upside as well. So, and it does look very different to certainly the Eurozone, but also the tone in the US, where now everyone's panicking and saying, oh, the Fed needs to cut for the next 4 months in a row.
Chris Williamson down next to the chief business economist down there. Although GDP looks set to weaken in the third quarter compared with the impressive gains seen in the first half of the year, the PMI is indicative of an economy expanding at a reasonably solid quarterly rate of around 0.3. Does the Bank of England need to cut rates right now?
I mean, it doesn't need to. I think it was sensible to cut in August because the other issue we've got is inflation is going to now tick up towards the end of the year. And OK, maybe you can look through that. You can make an argument for looking through it. But given that in December there's a good chance inflation will be closer to 2.8% on the CPI, nudging the 3% mark, it's going to be difficult, I think, for the Bank of England to justify cutting rates drastically. And the interesting thing about that, I guess, is, well, what's that mean for sterling? If you get Germany in despond, because basically it's a leverage play on China, and if you've got the US kind of worrying that suddenly, the soft landing is off the table, then maybe sterling is an outside bet for one of the stronger currencies going into the end of the year.
In terms of what is happening in the UK, the inflation story is going to tick higher. But could it tick significantly higher? I keep watching this conversation that seems to be happening between the Labour Party and the unions right now. And the unions are asking for some big numbers, and I'm just wondering whether the Bank of England is going to be watching that quite carefully.
I mean, I think I'll be very interested to see what Andrew Bailey says whenever he's over at Jackson Hole. I'm sure he'll be on the negative-ish side because he'll want to fit in with the other sort of central bank tone there. I mean, obviously he doesn't want to be political either, but I would be concerned because the new government has got a has got a certain amount of time to put a line in the sand and say, OK, guys, we've given you what you wanted on this. We wanted to clear the decks, but now it's hardball. You know, there is quid for the quo. And the risk is that doesn't happen because maybe the unions see or think that they're pushing on an open door. So it's kind of up to the new government to make sure that the unions know actually that's not an open door. You know, we made a...
you think that's what they think, though?
Oh, I think it's pretty clear that that's what they think. I mean, some of them are talking about going back to...
No, I'm not talking about the unions, I'm talking about the Labour Party.
Oh, no, well, that's a good point. Yeah, we don't know. I mean, the problem with the current government is that you don't know if it was just putting on, I feel like, a Tony Blair-style mask so to get into power. Yeah. And actually, you know, they're kind of more like a kind of Jeremy Corbyn-light kind of government. But I don't think we'll know that for sure until October the 30th, which is when Rachel Reeves delivers the budget. Because at that point, we'll see, obviously there have been many policies pushed through already that I think is fair to say have an ideological tinge. The VAT on private school fees is a good example. Doesn't raise a lot of money, punishes a certain section of society that is, you know, unpopular with Labour's core vote. If that's just red meat for their base, and we can see a more sort of a pragmatic set of policies at the end of October, then perhaps, you know, things will go the way we want them to. Yeah. But if it turns out that they're actually more left-wing than perhaps people had expected, and they are more interested in, you know, redistribution and kind of perhaps penalising certain groups in favour of their favoured base, then yeah, we could be in for a rough ride. And I do think inflation's something we need to watch anyway. Yeah. You know, because it's even, you know, it's been ticking up in the Eurozone as well. It's not that inflation isn't going away, and history does suggest that after the kinds of inflationary shocks that we've seen, you can get second waves. It doesn't mean we definitely will, but actually, you know, in reality, the probabilities are quite high that we could get something much higher. So, no, inflation is something we need to watch.
John, always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. John Stepek, breaking down the numbers and the analysis of what is happening around the economy right now here in the UK. What are we going to talk about next? We're going to return to the political story. Tim Walz taking centre stage last night at the DNC, the Democratic National Convention taking place in Chicago, rousing the crowd by telling them to turn the page on Donald Trump. We'll talk more about this next. This is Bloomberg. Thursday the 22nd, welcome back. This is The Pulse. I'm Guy Johnson in for Francine Lacqua. Let's talk politics now. Day 3 of the DNC, the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Well, that was yesterday. That was last night. The Democrat vice presidential nominee, Tim Walz, officially accepting that nomination. Taking the stage, it was an energetic speech. He said that Kamala Harris was the right choice to make middle-class Americans more wealthy.
If you're a middle-class family or a family trying to get into the middle class, Kamala Harris is going to cut your taxes. If you're getting squeezed by prescription drug prices, Kamala Harris is going to take on Big Pharma. If you're hoping to buy a home, Kamala Harris is going to help make it more affordable.
Down in North Carolina, Republican running mate of Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, telling a large audience that the U.S. needed a Donald Trump-led government to get the country back on track.
Now, Donald J. Trump represents something that so many in this country need right now, and I think it's important to recognize that we need hope in the United States of America. Hope that we can reignite this economy and bring back prosperity to American citizens. Hope that we can raise our kids in secure neighborhoods and safe streets. Hope that we can renew the patriotism that binds us as a country together, one nation under God.
J.D. Vance there. Let's talk about the Wall speech, though, in a little bit more detail. Vonnie Quinn joins us now to give us an update. Vonnie, a lot of eyes on him last night. We're trying to figure out who this guy is. We're trying to understand what he brings to the ticket. What did we learn last night, and what did he tell us maybe about what we're going to hear from Harris as well tonight or tomorrow? Sorry.
both. It's tonight for me and tomorrow for me, I guess, as well, Guy. Yeah. So basically, we got everything we were anticipating: the folksy Midwestern, middle-aged man, white man style of speech. We got it all in 15 minutes. He got down to brass tacks immediately. An attack on J.D. Vance. He said, I had 24 kids in my high school class and none of them went to Yale. And that was a direct attack on J.D. Vance and his wife, both of whom went to Yale. And then he continued on. Several catchphrases like, we'll sleep when we're dead. And then he went into coach mode, right? He's called Coach Walz. He'll be called vice presidential nominee Walz soon. But for now, he wants to be known as Coach Walz. And he said that he was best at pep talks. And so he said, it's the fourth quarter. We're down a field goal, but we're on offense and we've got the ball. So very much a man who wanted to appeal to the working middle-class white rural voter across the Rust Belt and even the Sun Belt, because those are states that this ticket needs to win, and somebody who also wants to engage this crowd. It's down to brass tacks now. There's 75 days left, and there was a lot of excitement and a lot of celebration and a lot of celebrities at this DNC. But once tomorrow night is over and Kamala Harris is accepted, then it's down to business.
As you say, a star-studded affair thus far, this DNC, and it looks pretty slick. So what were the other sort of big key speakers delivering on day three?
Well, when you start your day with Stevie Wonder, Guy, it's very hard to know how to get better from there, but it actually did. And there was another surprise guest tonight, and that was Oprah. She's one of the people in the whole world who doesn't need a second name. We all know who Oprah is, right? She's also an independent voter. She's registered independent, so it was very interesting that she came out to speak to independent voters, and that was something that we hadn't seen at the DNC before. She said that she had been an independent her entire life and had voted her values, and that the crowd needed to get out there and convince people to vote for the right part of the ticket. You obviously saw politicians as well. Bill Clinton with some funny lines during the night. He said that even 25 years on from the White House, he's still younger than Donald Trump, and obviously Amanda Gordon, as you're seeing there. And it'd be fascinating to see who introduces Kamala tomorrow. The New York Post is saying it might actually be pink.
Wow. OK. So the star-studded affair will likely continue. Vonnie, thank you very much indeed for updating us and continue to keep us updated on what is happening here. Let's get some analysis of the situation. For more on the DNC and the US election, we're joined by Natasha Lindstaedt, who is a professor in the Department of Government at the University of Essex. We thought we had her. A moment ago, she was there. Thanks for having me. And now she's not. Oh, I can hear her, but I'm told that she is not good. Natasha, bear with us. We're going to sort out some technical issues, and we'll come right back to you in just a moment once we have cleared those through. But basically, we are waiting now to figure out exactly what we are going to hear from Harris. We'll bring you that speech, obviously. We've got some extended coverage coming up right here on Bloomberg, and we're going to have some fantastic analysis for you tomorrow morning. We're also going to have some fantastic analysis after this break. We're back in a moment. We'll fix our technical gremlins, and we'll be back with Natasha in just a moment. This is Bloomberg.
Today, Balance of Power is live in Chicago for the Democratic National Convention.
So we've got a race here, and the sprint begins.
We'll bring you breaking developments.
Vice President Kamala Harris closing the gap with Donald Trump.
And informative analysis, all leading up to special coverage Thursday evening, including Vice President Harris's acceptance speech as the Democratic nominee for president.
As president, I will show Donald Trump what real leadership looks like.
Tune in today on Bloomberg Television. Today, Bloomberg is live at the Jackson Hole Economic Symposium, bringing you news and interviews with Fed leaders and other economic experts. Tune in for continuing coverage leading up to a special episode of Surveillance August 23rd at 9 a.m.
Welcome back. You're watching The Pulse. 48 minutes past the hour, nearly 49 minutes past the hour. So before we don our cowboy hats and head to Wyoming for Jackson Hole, probably worth just spending a few minutes' time talking about what has been happening in the euro area this morning, plus also the UK data that we've seen, because we're going to get more of it a little bit later on. We need to kind of get a handle on what is happening here. The big picture story out of the euro area in aggregate is basically that the composite PMI came through a little bit better than anticipated, 51.2. The forecast there was 50.1, i.e. we have stayed out of contraction territory. Now, the reason for that is that we saw a very strong print on French services. The bulk of the French economy is services, and the Olympics has had a very big and disproportionate effect. So you had a 55 print there. It was much better than anticipated. The expectation is that that's going to roll over next month, and this is something of an anomaly and a one-off. The German data was pretty shocking, particularly on the manufacturing front, and also on the fact that we've seen a pickup in the inflation story, and that was very much highlighted as part of the commentary that went with the German PMI data this morning. The UK data looks a little divorced from all of that. It actually looks fairly solid. It continues to deliver expansion, and we've seen multiple months of this coming through. So the composite number rising to 53.4, the forecast there, 53. Now, later on, we're going to get data out of the Eurozone on the wage front. Pay attention to that. We've also got claims data coming up out of the United States as well. So that's kind of the picture as we head into day one of Jackson Hole. Now, we're heading into the last day of the DNC. So let's return to that topic as well. We saw the vice presidential nominee, Tim Walz, delivering his speech last night. We're going to be hearing from Harris a little bit later on, and it'll be interesting to see ultimately what she has to say. Natasha Lindstaedt, we fixed the technical problems. We're back with the professor from the Department of Government at the University of Essex. Thank you for your patience. We greatly appreciate it. So what do we make of Tim Walz last night? What did he deliver? What does it tell us about what we're going to be hearing from Harris this evening?
I think Tim Walz delivered what Democrats wanted him to deliver, which was this sort of joyful, fun speech. It didn't go on too long. It was, as he mentioned, more like a pep talk. And he talked a lot about his background, his upbringing, his family, how much he loved his family, and what his values are, and what Kamala Harris's policies are going to be, as has already been outlined, that she cares about the average American, that she cares about lowering the cost of prescription drugs, making housing more affordable, things like lowering taxes for the middle class, where he's contrasting that with Trump, who is going to be lowering taxes for the rich. So he was really trying to appeal to a certain demographic, particularly in the Midwest, maybe rural voters as well. But he's also going to appeal to male voters. And that is one group that Kamala Harris is behind on compared to Trump. So the hope with a Walz on the ticket is that this is going to expand Kamala Harris's appeal.
Okay. How far did he reach to the right? It was really interesting hearing him talk about the Second Amendment, gun rights, etc. How different a candidate is he, and how great an ability does he have to reach into the middle and further right than maybe other Democrats have right now?
I mean, I think that's a big part of why she chose him, because Trump's attacks on Harris have been that she's this left-wing liberal from California, and so she wanted to balance that with someone who appeared to be more moderate, and he was moderate as a congressman. But then once he became the governor of Minnesota, he embraced more progressive ideals. You're right, he mentioned the fact that he is a gun owner, that he is a hunter, but that he also believes in gun control while not trying to get rid of the Second Amendment. So I think that was one of the ways that he was trying to appeal to those that are criticizing Harris, that she's going to overturn this or that, or that she's some sort of communist. And he's trying to make it clear that he's really more of a moderate, but also embraces some of these progressive values so that he can appeal to a wide range of voters.
This is a really slick DNC, and much slicker than I think we would have anticipated only a few weeks ago. How high are expectations for what Kamala Harris can deliver tonight?
The expectations are really high, and you're right. There's been all kinds of momentum, all kinds of positive energy. I mean, the way that the Democrats have turned this campaign around in the last 4 weeks, I mean, you would not have predicted this. The Republicans had a pretty good convention. They looked like they were on the poised to win, and the Democrats were in disarray. And then meanwhile, once Harris took the lead, she's been able to attract huge crowds, and both she and Walz have been this really dynamic duo. So there's going to be a lot of attention on her. Can she bring the type of energy that, let's say, Michelle Obama, Barack Obama brought on night two? Is it that type of movement? And thus far, it seems to be the case. You know, she's coming out to music by Beyonce often, and when she made a surprise appearance on night one, there was a lot of excitement about that. So she's going to have to keep building on that momentum, and then, of course, be able to articulate the types of policies that resonate most with voters.
How do the Republicans respond?
So the Republicans should respond by focusing on policy. I mean, that's what many experts have said. They just need to focus on the idea of there's inflation, that inflation is worse than it was 4 years ago, which is true, and focus on the issue of immigration. That's another issue that Republicans connect with. Instead, you see Trump ignoring advice. He just is focusing on personal attacks. I mean, one of the most recent ones was saying that he's better looking than Kamala Harris is. He seems bewildered when he's trying to explain what's going on with inflation by showing two Tic Tacs and one really small, or sort of breath mints. He can't stay on message. He's in a corner at the moment. And when he gets in a corner, when he feels like he's losing, he becomes unhinged. And if he doesn't get more disciplined, he's going to keep seeing his poll numbers dropping.
Be interesting, yeah. He's got a much more sort of professional crew around him this time around. Can they get him back on track, I think, is a key question. Natasha, thank you very much indeed. And Natasha Lindstaedt from the University of Essex, thank you very much indeed for the analysis and the patience. Let's talk about the rest of the day. What else we got coming up? So 10 a.m., you really want to pay attention to this. It's coming up very shortly. Euro area negotiated wage indications coming out of the ECB. That's a key piece of data. Peloton earnings out a little bit later on. We've got claims data out of the United States. US PMIs are coming up. It is day one of Jackson Hole, and it is the final day of the DNC. We are going to have the Kamala Harris speech a little bit later on. Pay attention to that one. The world certainly will be. Anyway, that data's about to drop. Up next, The Brief. Manus Cranny in New York. This is Bloomberg.